Okay, everybody. So this is our Tuesday session of MKT770. We are officially in module 3 or week 3 of the semester. So what I'd like to do tonight, as we get started, I want to go over with you the assignment that's due this week. So that this week, we have our first written assignment of the semester, and it's going to be what I call a market research or survey assignment. And I want to go through that with you just to answer a couple questions. Some of the prompts in this assignment are directly tied to the course material that we hopefully have already gone through. And I'm going to highlight what I plan to do tonight is to go back into module 2 and go over some key points on market research and analytics from the textbook, and that's from module 4, and then get into chapter 5 a little bit, which gets into market segmentation. And so I'm going to kind of just, as I mentioned, these classes, I'm really going to try to give you, because we're trying to pack in a condensed course and meeting one time a week, for a short period of time. I'm going to try to just highlight, give you a very high level type information, and kind of give you some just some areas that you just definitely have to focus in on. So let me get into, bear with me 1 second here. All right, so everybody can see the assignment here. It's the shared. Okay, so what the purpose of this assignment is really to let you start to think about, number one, why do sports properties conduct market research? And number two, what are they trying to learn about their fans, their customers, or potential customers? And so, this has been market research has been, a part of sports marketing, for 20, 30 years. The mechanisms in which we now execute these surveys has changed dramatically. I remember early in my career, we used to actually mail surveys to season ticket holders. And then we would mail them a return envelope and ask them to give us feedback on, everything from the season to their customer service to their in-game experience. And, that wasn't that long ago. So, obviously the mechanism in which now using technology has created ways to make surveying much more efficient, much more cost effective. But the idea behind it are still the same. And so why we do things, how we do them. And so what I'd like you to start to think about is, if you were working for a sports property, all right, so if you were in the marketing department and part of your job is to conduct market research, all right, where you're going to gather data, which you're gathering data on some target, and then the goal here is to then put meaning or purpose to that data by creating information. And so then that information hopefully helps you and assists you in making better business decisions. And so, market research, now the buzzword is analytics, right? Why I like to incorporate and why I incorporated this assignment into this course is because teams and leagues are now investing a lot of resources into personnel who just do this: market research, manage data, CRM coordinators, analytics, business analytics, and team analytics or player analytics, right? We hear about that, obviously, we hear about that in the media, about how teams evaluate talent and how they look at, measuring, plays and statistics. But what we're really concerned with on the marketing side is that how do we understand our customers better, and how do we better satisfy the needs of those customers? And part of that can be done through market research. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to put together a PowerPoint presentation, and I want you to sort of think about, if you were responsible for creating market research, I want you to start to think about A, what are your goals and objectives? What are you trying to accomplish? All right. So why are you conducting market research? All right. And what is the data that you're going to attempt to gather? Right. So what are you focusing this effort on? Now, one of the things that, and I kind of glazed over it a little bit, you can pick any sports property you'd like for this assignment. So this can be any professional team. This can be a collegiate athletic program. And so the first thing I really want you to do is you can pick any team, any league, or any athletic program, basically any sports property that would be potentially conducting market research. And then I want you to do a little bit of research on that property. So just give me some background information on that property. So it could be everything from the team, the sport, give me some ideas about the fan base, the league, their stadium, all right, where they play. You could look up and really understand the league structures and how that dictates sometimes revenue opportunities. And so that's sort of the first part of this, is just deciding what team or what sports property you want to use for this assignment. Then you're going to, again, develop a strategy. So big picture, sort of think about if you were working for this sports property, what would be your goals and objectives? What are you trying to learn? What data are you attempting to gather? All right. And then what are the benefits of this research? Why is this going to benefit the organization? All right. So that's sort of the first sort of way to sort of tackle this assignment. And then I want you to start to think about what demographic, geographic, or psychographic data would you like to capture on your target market. So think about, how and we're going to talk a little bit tonight about how we segment, right? How do we take our large group of customers, or a large group in general, and break it down into manageable units that share certain characteristics. So we would say we were going to segment a market, and there's different ways that teams and leagues do this and accomplish this goal. And sometimes it's just simply based on basic demographic information: age, income, ethnicity, gender, education level. Sometimes it's just geographic, where are you located? And then other times, what teams and leagues would try to target certain segments is based on that psychology, on why people make purchasing decisions. And so what's that sort of piece of your mind that sort of motivates you? Is it because of a lifestyle that you want to live? Is it because of the way it's something looks, or there's always this sort of the psychology behind how businesses target those types of customers, that no, it's not about necessarily the product. It's about what the product says to the outside. And so there's sort of that psychology behind, and that certainly can be a segment as well. Then what I want you to consider is what any market research or anybody in a marketing role for a sports property would think about is, what's the method in which they're going to use or obtain data. All right. And so one of the things that the book talks about in chapter 4, and we'll discuss a little bit as well, is the differences between syndicated data and primary data. All right. Syndicated data you would consider secondary data. It's basically data that someone else conducted. It's market research that somebody else did, and you're repopulating it for your purposes. All right. So this is, there are market research firms where their main goal is to gather data, repackage it, and sell that data to other businesses. And sometimes that works. Sometimes that absolutely is a more cost-effective way to do it, because, look, the reality is that for a sports property to conduct their own primary research, so that's, primary research is research that it's customized research that you do yourselves. For a sports property that doesn't have the experience or the expertise, they may want to purchase syndicated data. And again, unfortunately, sometimes when you do that, it's sort of like sticking a square peg in a round hole. It's not quite exactly what you were looking for. It's somewhat there, but it's not really. And I always give the example. When I was at the Eagles, we had released what we called sort of a dream package, sort of the dream seat. And it was it was oceanfront property. It was the best of the best seats, best amenities, included anything that, a fan, if you said money was not an object, we're going to include it in this package. So it included road trips, it included sideline passes, VIP parking, VIP entrances, pre-game hospitality with upscale food and top shelf, beverages. And it was legitimately the best package we ever developed. And I remember we sat around a sales table and we said, all right, well, who's going to buy this? And how are we going to sell this? And because we identified that it was really a product that was geared towards two segments: corporations, people that were going to use them for business purposes to entertain clients, or B, high wealth individuals. All right. And so we came up with a strategy on how we were going to sort of market and go to market and try to attract both those segments. The company side was sort of an easy fit. We sort of said, look, we'll go to the existing companies that already have seats with us. We're going to go to our existing suite holders, our existing corporate sponsors. We'll go to those businesses that are already with us and see if they're interested in upgrading up that escalator, like we talked about, that escalator concept, or interested in buying additionals. And so that was one area, that was one strategy that we were going to go to market. The next one was a little bit more complicated. And we said, well, we're going to market high wealth individuals. And I remember one of the guys that I worked with said, well, we can buy a list. We'll buy a list. And everybody's like, okay, well, what's, and he said, well, I know a market research firm that can run a list for us and provide data for us that is most expensive houses in a 30-mile radius from Philadelphia. So essentially, arguably the most wealthy individuals in the area. And everybody said, okay, that kind of makes sense, right? That's who we're targeting, high wealth individuals. And so we put together we bought the data, we put together a glossy brochure, real slick, brochure that we had our graphic design team made. It was a direct mail piece that we mailed, and it was really an expensive sort of initiative. But the idea was, well, if we sell a few seats out of this thing, it'll pay for itself. And that was kind of the idea. The problem with that strategy and why it ended up ultimately failing is, number one, when we bought that data, which what I would consider sort of secondary data, number one, we didn't know, did the people have Eagles season tickets yet, or already have season tickets? If these are high wealth individuals and they wanted season tickets, they probably already had them. Number two, are they football fans? Do they care about the Eagles? And so those were the two sort of areas that the data, well, yes, was important, and it was the right data, but it wasn't quite right. And had we done maybe something a little different, we might have been able to target maybe a different fan that we knew was a super fan, where it was more of again, like as I mentioned, more of that psychology of why someone is willing to spend more money on a luxury vehicle, on oceanfront property. They want the best of the best, and that's what motivates them. So think about primary versus secondary or syndicated data. All right. And then what I also want you to determine is your data collection methods. So are you going to look at gathering quantitative data or qualitative data? All right. Now, for this question, it can also be a blending. So it is very common that people that will send surveys, they're sort of a mix. There's a mixed approach where you would give questions that would be classify as quantitative. All right. And quantitative is basically like it sounds. Quantity. You're able to calculate the results and put a numeric value towards that question. And so we've all probably participated in a survey that was an example of quantitative research. Between 1 and 10, tell me about your experience, 10 being the best, right? Rate your experience at this event, 0 to 5, 5 being the worst, right? Putting a numeric value towards something and then being able to, for the market research, being able to take all those examples and then put sort of statistics around it, running averages, running all of those medians, all of those things that then can say 75% of the people put it as a 8 or above, right? Putting sort of being able to quantify the question sets. And then the other one is qualitative, basically like it sounds, quality. And this is oftentimes where people conducting market research will ask you open-ended questions. Tell me about your experience, right? They just want to hear something in your words. And so that's the difference between quantitative and qualitative. Oftentimes, the design and the execution of the survey will dictate what types of methods you use. And so what I mean by that is that if you are going to, you're going to do what, if any of you have ever been to an event, a sporting event or concert, oftentimes you do see people in a concourse trying to get you to participate in a survey. And it'll be what we call an intercept, right? So it's an in-person sort of getting you in real time. And usually it's done now on a, sort of a phone, an iPad, where they just quick 5 questions, rate this, yes or no, right? 0 to 5, rate, and it's quick and you move on very quickly because you don't have the time to really sit down and dive into a topic. So what I think what you need to kind of think about is then what is going to be the design of your survey. So some of that's going to be based on who you're targeting and how are you going to execute that survey. And so think about, all right, this is the data we want to gather. These are our goals and objectives. Here's how we're going to do it. Now, this is the way we're going to design it and execute it. All right. And this can be done through anything, any survey or surveys that you've experienced or participated in yourselves. This could be an example of it. It could be an intercept at games. It could be an email survey. It could be a direct mail. Direct mail surveys still happen. I guess it's every 5 or 10 years. The government still does a consensus survey. I think I just got one last year, I think, in the mail. It could be an interview, or it could be a focus group. So it could be something where, a representative from the team is going to interview an existing season ticket holder. So you decide how you want to and the book talks a little bit about the benefits of each type of survey that you can execute. All right, and the situations on when maybe you use one over another. Then what I'd like you to also do is just think about 5 questions that you would be part of your campaign. So just put together 5 examples of that would sort of reiterate the data that you want to collect. So just sort of give me 5 examples of question sets that would be part of your survey. And then what I'd also like you to identify is how would you determine if this is a successful market research campaign? So what would define success? Okay, and so think about how they would sort of look at was this a successful campaign? So this is not an assignment where you actually have to go out and conduct this research, obviously, but it is one that I think that I tried to make it as sort of and I tried to include the elements that I think are realistic, in that someone that would be working in this capacity for a sports property would have to consider when they're designing and sort of putting together a strategy. And then this would sort of be the foundational piece of then going out and then going and executing this survey. All right. Does anybody have any questions on this? I threw a lot at you. Everybody's good? All right.
Yeah, good.
All right. Well, if you have questions on it, again, it's due in Canvas by this Sunday. So if you have any questions on it, let me know. I am available the rest of the week, so I'm more than happy to get together with you, one-on-one on a one-on-one basis. If you're on campus, I'll be on campus tomorrow. I have office hours tomorrow and Thursday, and then if not, I'm also available, virtually. I'm available throughout the week, so we could always set up a call or a Zoom call, whatever you like. So, all right. So
is the final file type just PowerPoint, or do you want the questions and everything else like separate?
Just a PowerPoint.
Okay.
Just do a PowerPoint. What I'd like you to kind of think of, just put it together as if like you were representing that sports property, right? So just a minimum, probably 10 slides is probably, and just, when you add those questions in, just add them to the PowerPoint.
And it's okay if some of the content's in the notes section. So
yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. If you start giving me more detail of things, put it. I would say put it in the notes section, and then that way it's more realistic. Like you're not putting.
It's not like a wall of text.
2 pages of information in a one slide, and you can't see it now. Put it at very high bullet point format in the slide, and then any additional information you think that would be important would be, what you would say or include during a meeting when you would go over this strategy.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question. I should have said that. So, okay. All right. All right, I'm back into Canvas. Everybody can see Canvas, yes? All right, let me get into. And here, so just so you know too, if you have any questions or you want to see some examples, I actually posted here for you 2 real surveys that were conducted. One that I was a part of when we used to do it, the Eagles, we used to call it the voice of the fan. And we actually would email season ticket holders twice a year, once in the beginning of the season, once at the end of the season, sort of get that sort of warm weather, cold weather type of experience. And then we worked with a third party company called Turnkey, who's a market research firm that went out and designed and implemented and then went and reported back on the results. So that's the other thing. It's also very common that sports properties, when they look to do market research, oftentimes they do hire a third-party entity to be impartial or objective. So that way you're not there's no bias that's built into the question sets, the information that's gathered, and it's just the difference between, every sports team always thinks that they're the best and they do everything the greatest. And so sometimes there's a bias that can happen in some of the questions you ask or how you ask them. And so sometimes it is important to look at hiring a third party entity that can then go out and objectively ask questions, gather data, and then sort of calculate and make some meaning and create some meaning towards those areas. And that's always an interesting sort of process whenever you hear the results and upper management's going, oh, we can't do anything about that, or that's not the way that people really feel. And it's always interesting when here it is, here's the data to support what people are happy about and where there are areas for an improvement. And but those are two examples of it as well. So I can give you an idea of the types of questions and the types of ways that teams will do a survey. So let's get into, I want to go over with you chapter 4. Just going to load up here. All right, everybody should be able to see. All right, everybody can see sort of the chapter 4 here, the slides. All right, so we're gonna go through sort of this. I'm going to go through sort of this very quickly, sort of a high level. So again, different types of data that you can gather. Again, syndicated data that's collected by someone else that then you can repopulate. So US Consensus, another good example, want to learn about consumers and then have that data that they can then repackage and use for other purposes. There are demographic profiling companies or companies that provide syndicated data, like I talked about earlier. Nielsen, another company that just calculates ratings. So we always hear about the Nielsen ratings. Nielsen is a market research firm that now also calculates social media. They calculate buzzwords, topics that are trending on social media, digital searching. So they've expanded from their traditional sort of television viewership to now being able to use technology to track other things that are relevant to consumers today. And then any broadcast exposure as well. All right. There's some examples of types of ways that you can, there's different types of ways they can break down some of these syndicated data. Then there's sort of custom research, and this is the most common for sports properties to be able to conduct customized research that sort of fits the needs of that particular business. And again, the research falls into sort of two categories, quantitative and qualitative. And we sort of went over the differences there. Quantitative data, again, a lot of times now, online surveys most of them are filled with sort of what would be classified as quantitative. Rate this, yes or no, giving you sort of a 1 or 2, 0 to 10 rate. It's sort of, we see now even quantitative data or quantitative research being done on social media, right? So anytime you participate in a survey on Twitter or Instagram, these social media platforms now allow people to be able to calculate, be able to do quick research, and I do that sometimes even with my own business, where I'll just put a question out on an Instagram story, just to get a good understanding of what my followers are interested in, right? And so those statistics that are then calculated, I can look at and go, if I say, for my business, I say choose between maybe one or two different types of jerseys, whereas I sell vintage sports clothing now, in my business, and I could say to them, choose between A or B. And I may think that A is the better product, but B, 75% might choose B. And so that tells me a little bit about where what types of inventory I need to be able to continue to obtain. Intercepts, again, anything that's done in arena. Telephone surveys, we don't see them as much anymore because of sort of the do not disturb. Most people don't have home phones anymore. I'm starting to get surveys, and probably some of you are starting to get surveys as well at home. And then direct mail. We don't see as much direct mail as we used to as well. A lot of that is because of the low response rate in direct mail. And then you consider the cost of printing and mailing. It may be better to do an online survey where you can quickly develop a survey on Google Forms or SurveyMonkey, or there's tons of different platforms you can use. And the great thing is that, like on Google Forms, you can quickly develop and create a survey that you can then send that link. It takes you right into that form. People can fill it out, submit it, and then you automatically get the back end results that are calculated and compiled through like a CSV or an Excel file. So that way I can run a survey. In fact, I'm going to be sending out a survey for the sports marketing department probably next week. So some of you may receive it just to get some information from our current students. And what's great about it is that I know when students complete that, I'll be able to then download the results and be able to calculate them down if I do any kinds of quantitative research on there. All right, so that's intercepts again. One of the challenges with intercepts, one of the biggest challenges probably with intercepts is, number one, it's cost. You have to hire enough people, so it's expensive to hire staff. You have to have the technology to be able to support it, and you've got to be able to do it very quickly, because just like anybody else, like I'm going to the game tonight. I get in a Phillies game. The last thing I want to do is sit there for 5 minutes or 5-10 minutes and answer a survey. So, it becomes a lot harder to get people to do things when they're going specifically for a specific event. So it's hard to do it. I've had some experience in doing intercepts, and usually the best times to do an intercept are usually during breaks, in action, usually beginning of a game, or like at a halftime. The challenge becomes is that if you only interview or you only get results of the people that come in hours before the start or right when gates open up, you do lose maybe some of your target market, maybe some of the people that only fit into a certain criteria are going that early. And so you just have to be careful of it. Oftentimes what people that are working and doing intercepts, usually what they'll do is they'll have some sort of incentive, whether it be enter in for a chance to win a prize, give you something for participating on site, give you some sort of incentive to do that. All right. Qualitative data or qualitative research, again, can be a little bit, there's different ways that you can do this. And again, it's usually done through what we would consider quality data, right? So unstructured observations or discussions with consumers. So that's sort of what defines qualitative research. And this can be done through sort of in-depth interviews. Teams can do, one-on-one interviews, and they used to be very time consuming. If you were gonna design a survey where you wanted to get feedback from, let's say, your club seat holders or premium seat holders or suite holders, existing customers, to get an idea of how they feel about things. You may design a survey to want to do in-depth interviews on a one-on-one basis. Now that can take a long time to do that. And so timing is really sometimes can be a factor here. And so what it used to be, you'd have to set up an appointment, set up a time to meet face to face. Today, I would say that, the one thing that came out of sort of this sort of COVID is, now it's real easy to set up a Zoom call like we're doing right now. Very easy to set up a 15-minute interview and do it virtually and be able to get everything that you need and the information that you need. Focus groups is another area. Focus groups is another area that is very popular with sports properties. Oftentimes you bring a group of people in that are within that target audience. All right, so you may want to do a focus group on season ticket holders, and you may bring in 10 to 15 season ticket holders that sit in a room and answer questions. The problem with focus groups sometimes becomes sort of this group think, where there may be one or two personalities that dominate the conversation. There may be other people that just don't feel like speaking up. And so sometimes focus groups aren't necessarily a true indication of how people feel about certain things. I participated in a focus group, I guess it's about 5 or 6 years ago now at this point, when the Sixers, if you guys remember, when the Sixers were going to be releasing a new mascot. In the 2000s, they had hip hop, the rabbit. And when the new ownership came in the early 2010s, the new ownership group wanted to change the logo or rebrand by going back to the old logo, which they currently have, and then bring out and release a new mascot. And I actually sat in a focus group, which was run by a third-party entity. Actually, the gentleman's name is Dave Raymond, who is the original Philly fanatic. Dave Raymond now is what he calls himself, the Emperor of Fun. He's now a mascot consultant, and he actually consults any sports property on designing a mascot, executing it, coming up with a storyline, coming up with the look and the feel. And he was in charge of the Sixers' current mascot. I believe he was involved with Gritty. I believe he was involved with Fang, the union. He was part of the last college I was at. He was part of redesigning and developing a mascot at a small college. So anybody know what the Sixers mascot is? The current mascot is? Anybody know? Anybody know what it is? No, nobody knows what the current Sixers mascot is. It's if you see it, it's Franklin the dog, which doesn't sound that exciting. And when you see it, you're like, what is this? But I will tell you that having gone through the focus group, when they were making the decision, the reason they went with Franklin the dog was because one of the goals of developing a new mascot was to engage a younger fan, was to engage youth, and was to be able to take this mascot and go out into the community, go to schools, go to youth programming. And so it was really important at that time. The Sixers were thinking, we need to cultivate our youth sort of grassroots efforts to start to get kids, adolescents, excited about the sport of basketball and excited about the Sixers, because the idea there is that if, and the leagues do this as well, that if you can develop a grassroots community program to engage children they're going to start building equity at a small level, which within 5, 10 years start to get to an age bracket then they're attending games. And then as they get in the sort of the next stage of their life cycle, where it would be, let's say it's college or young adulthood, now maybe they're becoming a customer. And so building that equity at a small level, even at this is a long-winded way of saying that the focus groups, after they had completed the focus groups for Franklin the dog rated the highest. That option rated the highest for kids. So they actually interviewed children and interviewed young fans, and that was the option that the kids like overall was wasn't even close. For people like myself, I liked the Ben Franklin sort of the historical angle, which was an option, that it was an actual like a colonial mascot, and it was a Ben Franklin-ish, and they could and I like that option personally. But when they explained it to me on why they went with the dog, it kind of made sense to what the goals of that focus group were. Observations is another way to do it. Another example of qualitative research is, again, as we talk about observations, anything that people are putting out on social media, right? Examining comments, examining tweets, looking at when you're putting out certain things, what is the feedback that the team is getting? And so you'll get an idea of sort of the way people feel just based on sort of those social media posts or comments that you see. All right, so we talked a little bit about focus groups. We talked a little bit about in-depth or our observations, social media. Another types of research that's important is what we call B2B. Again, business to business research. All right, and so this is sort of where key businesses that have sort of a stake in sport, in terms of sports marketing. This could be corporate partners. This could be anybody that's a current sponsor, and they may be conducting research on their end to understand the effectiveness of that partnership. And so, if a sponsor's main goal is creating brand awareness or rebranding or changing the image of that company, sometimes they look at partnering with a sports property because they're now at a much higher level of awareness, because sports has is so ingrained into our society and our everyday lives that now companies can quickly feel like they can quickly build awareness by sponsoring or becoming a corporate partner. And so sometimes those sponsors or corporate partners themselves will conduct their own research to determine whether or not it was effective. Any vendors can provide information or data, right? And so, vendors are third-party entities. A lot of times you can obtain and conduct research through working with a vendor. And one of the areas that we always sort of, I always laughed at this one whenever we got into these meetings. So most stadiums use third-party concession companies like an Aramark. There's a few other major players in sports. Levy's is another one. Most hire a third-party concessions company. Number one, because of the liability that food service, in particular alcohol, has. When you're dealing with that many people and those volumes of people. And then two, it also has a lot to do with just the fact that a lot of sports teams are not experts in food service and don't have the bandwidth or understanding on how to run a successful concessions operation. And so they hire a third-party company to do that. And, that's one of the reasons. It's actually one of the main reasons why food is so expensive in stadiums and ballparks and arenas, because it's a third party entity that's already involved. And so the owner gets their share right off the bat, and then the next share goes to the concessions company. But then that share, let's say it's a 50-50 split, that 50% of what was collected then has to also pay for cost of goods, employees, any of the supplies, anything else. So when you start to think about why is a hot dog $10 at a ballpark, part of the reason it is because it becomes the system in which these concession companies can actually operate, and they're operating on very thin margins. But I bring that up because one of the things that, when you're in sports, you're always trying to satisfy customers, and you're always trying to get feedback from your customers. And we used to always get, we used to ask our customers, what do you think of concessions? What do you think of the food options? What do you think of the beer options? And we would ask these questions, and, there would always be some feedback. Oh, I really wish we had more upscale options. I wish there were more upscaled food options. I wish there were more, more craft cocktails or craft beer, right? And these were sort of the feedback we'd get. And so we would take this feedback, this feedback, and we would take it and we would sit down with the concessions company and say, look, here's what we're hearing from our customers. Here's what directly their customers are saying to us. And then Aramark, in this case, would say, we understand what you're saying, but let me give you the data to support the decisions that we make. And what they normally, and I always loved it because I knew the answer was going to come up. What they would say is, look, in this section we had this high-end product. We didn't sell any of it, right? What people were buying at a football game or a baseball game was hot dogs, soft pretzels, and cheesesteaks. That's what they're buying. They're not buying salads. As much as you may get one or two people that say, hey, I want a salad, the numbers tell you that people want basic sort of stadium food. And then you looked at the beer and the other beverages that people were buying. And at the end of the day, what we ended up sort of working there, because it is a partnership, is that an understanding of here's what the numbers say, but here we also have to satisfy some of the customers that have different preferences, and let's figure out a way to do that. And we normally could come up with compromises there. So users of market research, as I mentioned, leagues will conduct research themselves. Leagues are definitely conduct research themselves. Sports properties, the teams themselves, or sponsors. And so, usually this research is conducted for some sort of purpose. For teams, it's very common that they're conducting the research, A, to develop new products, to look at ticketing, find new season ticket holders, to evaluate fan satisfaction, or sponsor effectiveness, right? For sponsors themselves want to conduct this research to understand, is this investment worth it? Are we truly getting the value out of a sports sponsorship? Because it is very expensive to become a sponsor of a professional sports team. Part of the reason is that it's what we call exclusive, or that has a level of exclusivity. So you have a category exclusivity, which prohibits any of your competition to be involved with that team. And so it's a very expensive marketing investment for a sponsor to do that. And they want to understand, is it worth it? Are we getting true value out of the partnership? So this is a good sort of slide to sort of help you with your assignment. Again, looking at, all right, what's the right research? How are you going to perform the right research? And some of these themes is sort of what we talked about earlier tonight, in terms of understanding your objectives, coming up with a plan, looking at a budget, right? So what is your budget? And then figuring things out. And then, today, as it relates to market research, as it's closely related, is now what we would, the buzzword of data analytics. And so the idea now that we're going to figure out ways to calculate and gather data from all different sort of points and figure out how we're going to not only sort of capture this data, but now we're going to how we're going to put meaning towards it. And now CRM systems are now being implemented throughout leagues and throughout teams, where they have these powerful databases, which are sort of the CRM, customer relationship management systems, that gather data and profiles on everybody. All right. And so if you've ever, any of you have ever think about sort of, if you've ever searched on the internet, Googled something, and then all of a sudden you went on social media and you found an ad for it, right? Then all of a sudden an ad popped up and you're like, wow, how did that happen? The site I always loved sort of testing this theory out is if any of you have ever purchased a flight or a hotel on Expedia. If you are signed up for an Expedia account, like a membership rewards account with Expedia, and you go search out a flight, I would guarantee, I would almost bet almost anything that if you went on Expedia and searched a flight, the next day you would get a direct email where it would say, hey, 24-hour special to whatever that destination was, right? So like if you were searching out a flight to Chicago, it would say special flash sale, 24-hour special packages to Chicago. And you get that email and you're like, wow, how did they know that? How did they know I was interested in Chicago? Well, part of that is through these sort of the CRM systems, these cookie technologies that are now calculating everything we do and using it to market us. And so teams and leagues do this all the time. There are teams here locally in Philadelphia that if you go to their website and you go to two key areas of their website, it triggers or triggers something or marks something on your profile in their CRM systems, and then you're going to get immediately solicited to. So the two areas that, if you go, number one, ticket section. If you go to a ticket section of a team's website, that tells the team that you're interested in going to a game. And number two, if you go to the schedule. So if you go check out the schedule, same type of idea. And so there are teams that I know have these sort of CRM systems in place so that if a potential customer goes to their website, that cookie gets sent to their CRM systems. A CRM coordinator or data analytics person in the morning runs a report of everybody that visited their website and went on those two areas of the website, gives them to the sales department, and the sales department calls and says, hey, JP, so-and-so from, XY, wanted to just touch base and see if you're interested in going to a game. And you're thinking to yourself, yeah, I actually am. It's kind of Big Brother-ish in some ways. It's kind of, it's a little scary. Marketers would argue that it's a more efficient way of satisfying the needs of your customers, giving people the information or giving them incentives to things that they're actually interested in. And that's where these CRM systems can do that. Okay, so that is chapter 5. Chapter 4, excuse me. I did that fairly quickly here. Bear with me a second here. All right, what I want to do is for the next 15 minutes, I want to go into this week's module. I want to go into module or chapter 5. Can everybody see that? Can everybody see market segmentation? Yes? Everybody's good? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So chapter 5 is a little bit about market segmentation. All right. And again, the idea behind segmentation here is taking a larger group and turning them into smaller manageable groups that share certain characteristics. All right. And so we use them to sort of develop specific or specialized marketing plans or marketing strategies. All right. And so, one of the sort of the criteria that, or some of the criteria that you should consider when you're looking at developing a segment is, number one, can you identify them? Can you identify this segment, right? Is it identifiable? And then number two is, do I have access to them, right? In a way that I can sort of reach them and target them. And then the third is, do they care? Are they going to be responsive? Right. And so, there's just, you could come up with, we could come up with, we looked at this class right now and we said, anybody wearing a blue shirt is a segment, right? But the idea is that, number one, can we identify that? Is it accessible? Do we have access to those people? And then do they care? And so those are, the other part of sort of segments is that, how large is the potential opportunity, right? And so is it a, and in certain sports, they have to be more focused on developing segments than others. For example, Major League Baseball, there are 82 home games in any home schedule. So very few people or customers can go to all 82 games. Most people don't have the time or the money to go to 82 games. I mean, there are weeks where you could go, a 12 game, 14 game homestand where you're going every night or every day. And so very few people can do that. And so what Major League Baseball does and what each membership team does is create sort of what they call season ticket equivalents, which essentially is developing smaller packages and target different segments. And so if you ever looked at sort of what, even we say the Phillies right now, obviously it's topical, look at the different season ticket packages the Phillies have, and I guarantee you can probably pinpoint which segment they're trying to target. So for example, college students could be a segment where it would be weekend games, that they are weekend games, cheap tickets, dollar dog promotions, that a 20-year-old, a young adult is looking to go to for a social experience, looking to do something fun on the weekends with their friends. All right, that's the segment there for the weekender. Then you may see a Sunday day game package where once a month you may go on a Sunday day game, and you may see that that's going to be targeting young families with children. And part of the promotions that are developed in those games that are part of that package are kids giveaways or experiences that the kids can do. All right. And so that's where, these different segments can be developed, or these different products can be developed to target those specific segments. And then how you communicate and how you market to them, again, has a lot to do with what we just talked about in terms of, once we identify them, once they're accessible, now are they going to be responsive? All right. And so the strategies on which we're going to communicate with them could be different, right? If I'm going to be targeting a young college kid for a college type product or program or college series programming, I'm probably going to utilize digital or social to market to them. If I'm targeting somebody that's my parents' age, I may be looking at newspaper still. I may be looking at traditional television or billboards, right? So different sort of media, platforms that you may use to target those specific segments. All right. Here's some of the other types of segments that you can see. Corporate clients, families, children, there's others that you can think of. There's also different types of segmentation. So state of being, state of mind, product benefits, and product usage. These are different. These are other ways that you can also identify characteristics of customers or potential customers. So state of being, who we are as individuals. These are our basic demographic information. Age, where we're located, income, education, gender, sexual orientation, marital status, ethnicity. Who we are as individuals is sort of the state of being segment. All right. State of mind, again, our attitudes, our lifestyles, our preferences, our perceptions, all of those sort of how we feel about certain things, right? What are our personality traits? And some of the ways that, people that, need to be sort of thought of as innovative or early adopters or achievers, right? People that are sort of that have there are psychological things that sort of trigger why we make purchasing decisions. Product benefits, different segments of types of customers that get different benefits out of buying things. All right. Some people just want sort of this affiliation, right? To feel like you're affiliated with something bigger than yourselves, right? Other people will buy things, the sports related things, for, the achievement of it, right? This could be everything from, joining a golf membership to running a 5K or a marathon, right? The idea that you're going to accomplish something, you're going to learn a skill. There are some sports businesses where they're targeting people that are focused in on health and fitness, right? And so there's different, and then there's also sort of this, what we would call the product usage segment. Product usage segment basically has sort of two key sort of factors to it. Number one, sort of the 80-20 rule, that 80% of the business comes out of 20% of the customers, right? So this 80-20 rule in any business, but in sports in particular, so that 80% of your revenue comes from a very small percentage of your season ticket holder or your customer base. And what I mean by that is that you're going to look at, and one of the ways that you can divide your customers, and I think this is probably one of the most sort of the key ways to segment your customers, is by looking at product usage. So rewarding your most avid fan, what we would classify as your heavy user. These are people that have full season tickets. These are people that have been with you for 10, 15, 20 years. These are loyal customers. Now, it doesn't matter how much they spend. We're only concerned about the frequency in which they purchase things. All right. So your heavy users, most people fall in sort of this medium user, right? Light users are sort of, maybe newer types of customers, newer types of fans. But you can divide them. And I think one of the things to try to cultivate is always try to cultivate and continue to target and reward your most valuable customers, which I believe are your avid customers, your heavy users. And one of the things you'll see here is, all right, you can see here, well, there's some figures here in terms of, I think there's I want to show you. I'll show you next week. There's a sort of an escalator concept that I think we've talked a little bit about, or we'll talk about, in terms of how do you bring people from a light user to a medium? How do you bring people from a medium user to a heavy user? And that's another strategy in and of itself, of how do we sort of still cultivate these fan bases so that you're bringing people up this escalator and continuing to try to encourage your most avid customers. And so this will sort of tell you a little bit about, okay. That's good for today. I just kind of really, I kind of moved through that very quickly, so I apologize if but this is available to you in Canvas here. Um, All right, so that's really just going to wrap it up here tonight. So thank you guys for jumping in. Just as a reminder, so you've got a discussion board due. You got a discussion board post due by Thursday, and then at least 2 response posts by Sunday. I went in and graded week 1 or module 1's discussion board. What I would say generally is I think most of you did a pretty decent job. I would say that if you didn't get the full 4 points, what I would encourage you is just to review the feedback and make some adjustments. Some of you didn't get it because you didn't get it in on time. Some of you didn't get the full four points because you didn't respond to at least 2 of your fellow classmates. Some of you didn't get it because you didn't put enough content in your post. All right, so I am looking for comprehension. I'm going to look at, are you putting enough information in your initial and your response posts? And again, if you want sort of a general guideline, think of it as a paragraph per post. All right. So that's due this week, as well as your market research assignment. If you have any questions, again, let me know. I'm available. I will talk to you later. Go Phils. Hopefully get a win here. And hopefully we're talking next week about, we're in a different spot here. So we'll see. But all right. Have a good night, guys. I'll see you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.